So, sir, you made a point around the point on the cross charge, and that within the company cross charge, you said that there is also that deeming fiction that is being clarified, that even if you have not raised an invoice, for the interest of the audience, if you could just reiterate that point, because that is very, very critical. And I believe a lot of our audience could not join when you were making that point at that stage. It's remarkable, just to comment again, the whole ISD issue, as you rightly had pointed out even before this meeting started off, is an issue which is being grappled by each and every registration. I won't even say company, because today companies are divided into registrations in our world. Each and every registration across, and the way the government has taken this step forward to say that it is clarified that ISD is not mandatory, at least for the past, really makes a lot of resolution in terms of the issues that are being faced in audit. And the second point around cross charge, although not much is out in terms of what would be clarified, the point that you made on deeming, when the invoice is not raised, if you can just reiterate that and clarify, that would really help the audiences at large in terms of what we are expecting as a clarification.
Thanks, Prashanth. Like, you see, we are all aware that whatever the way we have defined services, anything that the HO does for all the other units, anything is a service legally. So if it is a service, supply of service, you are supposed to raise an invoice. So the question that was being raised all across in audits was that your HO has done this, it runs a supervisory, it stands in a supervisory role to the units, to the branches, it accords certain sanctions, it does recruitments for the branch offices, so it does a host of other things which can be construed as service being rendered by the HO to the BOs. And you haven't issued an invoice, so now you issue an invoice, pay tax on this, pay interest on this, and in certain cases penalty also. So now it will be clarified, as Prashanth was saying, it is proposed to be clarified that in such cases where credit is fully available. Namaste, Shashank sir.
Oh, Shashank sir has come. Oh, sir, welcome, sir. In fact, let me welcome. Yes, sir. Welcome, sir. Thank you, sir.
My apologies.
Good afternoon, sir.
Caught in a meeting. Good afternoon. So, how many participants are here in the webinar?
So, participants so far, sir, 87 have joined.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And now, sir, in speakers wise, also we have 5-6 of us are here. A couple of them will join a little later, sir.
Right. So, Mishra ji, you please carry on. Since I have joined,
as I was saying, and Prashanth has very validly flagged this point. It's a very crucial point that in case of internally generated services where credit is fully available to the recipient, even if you have not issued an invoice, the open market value shall be deemed to have been declared as nil. Prashanth, I believe, and Abhishek ji, I believe that this is a big step, a huge step. Even we did not contemplate that. Say about a month ago, we did not contemplate that we'll be coming up with somebody would be suggesting this.
No, sir. I think
in fact we've been advising clients that this will sail through for last several months now, and couple of these clients are really big ones. Very well-known, industry players, and we had taken that stand on, the basis that the GST Council will address such an issue in favor of industry.
So no, so I think I fully acknowledge and completely agree with my friend Abhishek as well as with you. This is absolutely one of the biggest thing that could have happened out of the council meeting, given how currently the audits are going on. And it would be an immense help to across industry, most companies, to be honest.
If I may add, it's a zero-sum game actually. It's a zero-sum game. If somebody had done a cross-charge on this, first of all, we are all aware that accounting conventions and generally accepted accounting principles do not mandate the issuance of invoices in such cases where cost centers or profit centers have not been separately recognized. It was the GST law that was mandating issuance of invoices, but this was a little known facet of the law. very little known facet of the law. It was confined, this understanding was confined to a few experts like Prashanth and Abhishek and Manish maybe. But it was not, I won't say not widely known, it was not even generally known also. But then it suddenly hit with a lot of force when audits began.
Yeah.
So that is when the menace actually arose. So having realized that it's a zero-sum game, what you pay here would be available as credit. So why make the taxpayer go through the rigmarole of issuing an invoice retrospectively, which again has legal ramifications, and then only to end up providing him credit? Again, for providing credit of this at this late stage, you would also require another huge amendment, because the credit shelf life is also gone for those years now.
Nice.
So
yeah, Mr. Mishra, you're absolutely right in terms of saying that this is something which is, certainly required at this stage when audits had started. But as Abhishek was pointing out sometime, and I think Prashanth also agreed with him, most of us, even prior to this amendment, were exactly taking a similar stance with respect to people whom we advise, because as you rightly pointed out, the accounting treatment and the books of accounts have to be aligned with the GST records. We can't have a disconnect between the two. Because when there is an audit conducted, the audit is not only of the GST records, the GST records have to be reconciled with the books of accounts, right? They cannot exist in isolation. And books of account or Companies Act have got nothing to do with one unit of one entity invoicing another unit of another entity for certain services which are deemed to be provided. It just didn't exist. So it is, I believe what you said is correct. This is, to my mind, a very, very good facilitative clarification that has come. And most businesses would be very welcome. I just wish we had read enough about this, because in the whole issue relating to the GST Council recommendations, I think somewhere this has been a little overlooked.
Yeah, it was underwhelming. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing on this.
Yes, sir.
You must be aware that there is what Mishraji mentioned about where full input tax credit is available. But it is also been clarified during discussion that where full input tax credit is not available, there also cost of salary of employees involved in providing such internal services, that will not be constitute part of the value of internally generated services. So that's another, I think, big demand was there of the trade, which was also getting addressed.
This is and arising out of this, one more thing I would like to flag, that you have issued an invoice. Say you have issued an invoice, credit is fully available, but you haven't included the, say, certain cost component. You have done a cross charge. You have issued an invoice, but certain cost component has not been included in the invoice. Even that will not be questioned. The value that you have declared in the invoice, irrespective of the fact that you haven't included certain components, cost components into the value of that particular service that you have cross-charged, will be accepted as the open market value, which is obvious. This is what the proviso to Rule 28 says.
Basically, it is a reiteration of the second proviso to the Rule 28, that whatever is the value that is taken, that deemed value will be taken as the correct value. There will be no question on the value itself. So in that sense, the ITC flow becomes more smooth. It has actually totally resolved the issue of the past. When there is an externally generated service, IST mechanism is an option. And when it is a matter of internally generated services, whatever is a value that the industry deems correct, that value which is declared in the invoice is the correct value. And if the invoice is not there, in that case, also the value which has been there in the accounting books, that will be accepted as the value.
Right. So I think, sir, on this issue, we have got plenty of clarification. In fact, let me now see Shashank sir is here. So ideally, we should hear him. So let me invite sir formally and welcome him. Sir, maybe a few observations which you would like to make, because sir, a lot of noise, of course, being made and heard and written about, particularly this GSTN being brought under the PMLA, being notified under PMLA. So what was the actually, the nudge coming from where and why the government had to do this? of course, it has been partly clarified, but maybe sir would like to make it much more clearer that, certain doubts and certain suspicions being, raised, in the mind of, the taxpayers that, and they're a little worried. So this is one aspect, sir, of course. And then, of course, online gaming side, of course, a lot of headlines are there, in fact, and which are perhaps some of them are completely wrong-footed. And perhaps maybe we would like to make an observation here also, sir. So these two issues, which I think, I would flag immediately, and maybe the other panelists would like to add a couple of them, perhaps a little technical ones. So let me invite Shashank sir to speak a few words on this.
A very good afternoon to all the distinguished panelists and Shailendra ji. Thank you for inviting me. My apologies that I joined late on account of some other commitment, and I would also seek your indulgence that I would be leaving the meeting after some time because of some other pressing engagement. But as far as the issues that Mr. Shailendra has pointed out, so I think both issues have been clarified to the extent that they have been post the GST Council meeting. As far as the sharing of information is concerned, that is one-way sharing of information that has been explained again, that it would be FIU, Financial Intelligence Unit, which gets a lot of information of suspicious transactions. Those are the ones that will come to GSTN. One question that has been raised is that these information has to be shared with an organization which can actively act upon it. GSTN is not a enforcing body, so what will it do with that information? But the GSTN is the repository of all the information on GST, and to that extent, it can make good, useful information. Perhaps certain protocols can be developed for that. One is it will go into their risk analysis parameters based on what has shared. Second, based on the geographical location, it can also alert and share it with the concerned tax administration as to what follow-up action they need to take. So it is arising out of our commitments under FATF. So it had to be done. Otherwise, we should not be seen to be falling foul of the FATF, whatever their requirements are. So on the whole, it is not a two-way information, and it is expected that it will only improve our compliance mechanism, systems and environment. So we should not be sort of taking it to mean that it will, GSTN will now share information regarding, wrongdoing of taxpayers, and it will become under PMLA. Enforcement Directorate will now go after those taxpayers. They will take additional action. No such thing is ever planned in envisaged, so that should not bother our taxpayers. So that's on this issue, and on the issue regarding taxability of online gaming, horse racing, and casino. So the one is that the discussion was very rich. In the GST Council, there was a total unanimity in the decision that was taken, and that decision was preceded by a discussion on all the various facets of the issues that we are talking about, whether industry will die, whether the ecosystem in which it is going to flourish, whether that will be affected, what is the moral impact of it, how it is affecting our young children. So all the various aspects, what is the paying capacity of the people who are indulging in, who are using these services, particularly horse racing and casino, how children need to be sort of protected to the extent possible. And a very important aspect was some sort of a uniformity of approach and some sort of a transparency in how do we administer this, whatever decisions is being taken by GST Council. So flowing out of these considerations is one is that tax rate has been decided to to be kept uniform, 28%. There was some discussion whether on some of these elements there should be some abatement should be given before we arrive at the tax rate, at the value, so that there is some benefit given. But then it was again felt that that would not be proper to do, because these are all not the kind of services, not the kind of activities that should be equated with some of the essential activities, or with a tax rate that is, say, prevailing for food items or for some other essential items. This tax rate should be higher than that, because it is not an activity that is totally sort of desirable, and it is something that is based on capacity to pay. And also it is important that GST Council may not be able to regulate it, but it must put a certain cost in order to ensure that those who are playing it, they are cautious, and they are also made to think that it is something that they need to be going forward, do it in some sort of a moderation rather than in unlimited manner. So the tax rate has been kept at 28%, and the mode of charging, the value would be on the total value of the bet placed, or on the amount that is with the totalizator that has been paid, or the amount that is paid at the entry for online gaming. And insofar as the other issue is concerned, that is how do we sort of operate this system? So that will be, some of these issues, I am sure you'll have some doubts how it will be done. So there will be amendments in the Act. 3 will be amended to now expand the ambit of actionable claim to also include online gaming and horse racing and casino, so that this debate regarding what is game of skill and what is game of chance we don't get drawn into it. So anything where money is paid, where money is expected to be gained, that would become by definition something that is in the nature of actionable claim, which is out of the ambit of the other actionable claim, which is not taxable. That is number one. And number two, what will be the procedures, what will be the system that will be put in place, that the law committee will very soon be discussing those issues. And then it is hoped that in this monsoon session itself, we will be able to implement the system. And the idea is that, there should be some sort of a closure to this issue, because it has been going on for a long time and it was creating uncertainty. So we hope that it will help. There have been unhappiness, there have been apprehension that it is likely that there will be closure of the online gaming will suffer a setback. We are creating given it a mortal blow. So we have to see, the jury is out, but we have to see what is the elasticity of demand when these taxes are imposed. And going forward, we hope that it will settle down and we will be able to operate it in a way that it is best for the system, for the revenue, and also it meets the multiple objectives with which this decision has been taken in the GST Council. So I have this much to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. In fact, since you have to go, sir, maybe I will request, some of the panelists, in case they need certain clarification or something, they're free to do that. Manish, sir, maybe you have some queries or something.
Absolutely. So, sir, thank you so much for your perspective right now. Makes it really useful for business to have people like you addressing everyone just within 2 days of the GST Council meeting with all these clarifications. So thank you so much for that. The issue that I had was actually in respect of the constitution of the tribunals, which, as you know, is something which has taken a bit of time. We are now into 6th year of GST, and many of the businesses have had issues with the GST authorities on interpretation. So in your opinion, how would the next steps happen in respect of the constitution of the tribunal? What would be the time frame? Because I believe there is some work relating to the infrastructure that has to happen, and then that infrastructure has to be adequately manned. So it is a bit of a process. What kind of timelines are you thinking for the tribunals to get going?
See, the law relating to the constitution of the appellate tribunal, that would get notified in August. So once that law is notified, the intent is to do it as quickly as possible. So after that, actions have to be done in parallel. Once the law has been notified, then applications will be called for the for the selection of the members. Benches have to be created, so there has been discussions as to how many benches, because different states, particularly bigger state, definitely want more than one bench to help their taxpayers. So as of now, tentatively, it is decided that at first go, there should at least be one bench. There will definitely be one bench in every state, except the Northeast, where Guwahati will be the bench. But appeals of GST appellate tribunal from Guwahati bench will lie with the respective high courts. So that is one decision. And second is that bigger states where they have a demand for more than one bench, at least to start with, they can have benches where there is also high courts there. Like Maharashtra has benches of the high courts, Uttar Pradesh has. So maybe we can mirror the GST appellate tribunal with the benches that are in high court. The other thing is that since one bench is technically four, members, two technical and two judicial. So within the state also there can be some kind of circuit benches, that one bench sits. One, I don't know what to call.
Principal bench.
I will not call it a principal bench.
Area benches.
No, I mean
those concepts are gone.
Circuit benches of the state bench. Circuit benches of the state bench.
So, I mean, it would be a division. We can say there is a bench of four, a division which will consist of two. So division bench can sit in one state, in one location, and the other division bench can be a circuit bench depending upon where the needs of the taxpayer is more. So that is in terms of quick operationalization, so that we don't get bogged down right in the beginning as to how many states must have how many benches. So even if we accept the numbers, we'll also have problem regarding how many members do we immediately select and get them in place. So that is a minimal approach that we are doing. At the same time, we are going to have need for infrastructure. So that work is also going to start parallelly. There will be an effort to identify where the building would be. We are taking help of the states. Maybe we have to work out whether cost has to be shared between center and state, or whether some part of the cost will be given totally by center, some will be shared by state. So those are some things that need to be discussed. But the expectation is that in 4 to 6 months, we should have these benches up and running.
Sir, I have a question. Now, these formation of these tribunals are already delayed by 6 years and maybe six more months. In the meanwhile, there are thousands of, my understanding of the number is about 10,000 of appeals where Commissioner Appeal has already passed an order. Now the floodgates will open in the sense that most of these matters will go to tribunal. There will be a couple of hardships, and sir, through this medium, we would want to highlight the industry challenges, which you could put before the GST Council in an appropriate way. One, under GST, the pre-deposit is 30%, 10% plus 20%, 30%. So as we speak about formation of the tribunals, 30% of the amount is already out of the pocket. A person may win or lose. That's a separate point. But there will be additional burden in terms of time. Why? Because now what will happen is in the Bombay High Court order, which I got last week, and that is also in line with the circular which the board has issued, is that every petitioner who's before the jurisdictional high court for because of non-formation of the tribunal will get 3 months from the date of the formation of the tribunal. And there is a very clear order now in our case in Bombay High Court, which will give respite, clear respite, because there'll be no recovery from that perspective. We have two fundamental issues, sir, today. One, the rate of pre-deposit is 30%. And why should businesses suffer for non-formation of the tribunals for 6.5 years? And when it will be formed also, then also there will be no guarantee that these will be, on fast track. So every petitioner or every taxpayer will have to move urgency. So you can imagine the load on the tribunals on day one will be that whosoever's urgency is accepted will be heard breaking the queue. So that will be the first issue, sir, in terms of the pre-deposit. Second is that in terms of the formation, now the formation happens. Till today, there is no formation. Immediately the formation happens. And even if the formation happens in piecemeal, there'll be no respite, because what will happen is the court will now say that the tribunal has been formed. Now your 3 months period start today. You please go and file an appeal. Appeal will be filed, but when will the matter be heard, and when will it be decided? So, and sir, we know that GST is a great reform. It is the reform of the century, and our Indian bureaucrats and the entire system has worked together seamlessly to address this issue. And we understand that even formation of the tribunals couldn't have happened in haste, and it's a very, very welcome decision that all this is happening with all robust preparedness today. But sir, these 2 points, I think if these could be highlighted to the Honorable Finance Minister and to the Revenue Secretary, I think it will really help industry the way we have addressed.
What are you expecting? What is your expectation from the government on this issue?
So, sir, expectation is very clear. Under service tax regime, also the pre-deposit was 7.5%. So, why it is 30%? It has to be at par. At least in this period, there has to be a waiver till the time the matter is heard. Because 6.5 years delay is not because of the petitioner or the taxpayer. If that has happened because of genuine reasons, and we are not saying that the reasons are not genuine, we want a robust appellate mechanism today in the country. But if that has to happen, it must not come at the cost of the taxpayer.
Okay.
Let me just respond to it in a more general manner. One, as to how we will cases will be decided, what will be the manner of taking up the cases, what will be the order of taking up the cases. So here I am confident that the members of the tribunal who will man this will have enough wisdom to handle this. They will be retired judges of district judge, and high court judge will be monitoring them as a president. And also, senior officers of the state and central government will be manning this. So I am hopeful, one, that they will evolve their own system as to how to prioritize the appeals, and number two, as to how they take up the disposal, because yes, there will be a lot of backlog. So if something, by bunching of the cases, by taking some similar cases, take where judicial precedent has already been formed up. So I hope they will take these categories and criteria and try to expedite that. And as far as the pre-deposit is concerned, well, that's in the law. Until we don't change the law, this is how it is. And the taxpayers are well within their right through their associations to make a representation on this issue. And then government, and because now, as you know, the tax administration of the entire country is the stakeholder in any decision. So then the decision will have to be taken after proper deliberation.
Thank you so much, sir.
May I add to it? Ashima.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I would just like to add two things. Number one, if you look at the GSTAT formation issue, look at the fact that even though the corresponding amendments in the acts have not been passed by the states, either by way of ordinance or through the amendments in the act itself, because of the state legislatures not being in session, yet to expedite it, we have already taken an in-principle decision about the number of benches and also the power to decide the jurisdiction as per the request of the state has been given to the honorable chairperson of the GST Council. I mean, we are going a priori to the fact, to the amendments in the state acts. Even we have notified 1st August as the date for notifying the Center Act. The states have to follow as soon as possible we are moving ahead of the amendments in the Act itself. Number, jurisdiction, and we have also nominated the Chief Secretary of one of the states, that is the state of Maharashtra, as a member of the Search Cum Selection Committee. If you believe us, then we are already in the fact that we are already on the way ahead as to the moment the amendments are passed to bring it into operation, to operationalize as soon as possible. In the during the council meeting itself, the revenue secretary stated that we will be issuing the advertisements as soon as possible. He also stated that you should look for the places for the GST appellate tribunals, that is a location. He has also directed that the process for Group B recruitment, Group B and C recruitment, that was not stated in the council, but otherwise that the process for that should be initiated. The notifications should be issued as soon as possible. So we are moving a lot ahead so as to bring them into place as soon as possible, as soon as the decision has been taken. And also the decision is to operationalize one bench at least in all the states as soon as possible. Common benches like West Bengal and Sikkim have planned a common bench. Similarly, the states of Northeast, some of them, 4 of them have planned a common bench. And also the UTs without legislatures, for them also, we would be considering the benches common. So all those things are really ahead. We are moving ahead. As soon as the legislation is passed, these that will be in place. Secondly, regarding the free deposit, the issue is there are two possibilities. One is we have the possibility of considering the stay in each case, or we have the possibility of considering the free deposit in each case. As you are very well aware, if the issue of free deposit in central excise, there was no provision of free deposit earlier. And when the case used to come for stay of recovery, at that time it used to take almost half an hour to 1 hour to decide on the amount of the free deposit itself. It was like hearing of the case itself. So the number of cases which were decided by the tribunal were half the number which are being decided today. Today you have the miscellaneous matters which are being heard in the morning, which ends in half an hour, and then the proceedings of the tribunal for final decision on the matter starts. Otherwise, what was happening is that the proceedings would start for hearing of the stay matters, and that would take half of the everyday time of the tribunal. To expedite that matters, the issue of free deposit has been brought in so as to expedite the hearing of the cases and the final.
But at 30%, not
yes,
at 7.5%, 10%.
I understand.
30% is too high.
I
When
understand
if you
your
see the
concern.
data
I
also of the
understand.
tribunal, 95% of the matters decided by tribunal are in favor of the assessees. So if we keep that in mind, 95%.
Let her clarify that. Yes, I mean, we will come to that. That the data.
But then the final decisions in these matters used to get delayed. That is expediting the disposal of the cases. There has to be a trade-off between the two. But as sir has rightly said, as the member sir has rightly said, you can represent for a lower amount of free deposit. That issue can be seen.
So since we have Arun Mishra sir with us still, maybe he would like to have few point, and particularly this mirror amendments which are required by the states. So do you see much challenge of further delay or something, or it can be wrapped up quickly in a space of maybe 3 months or maybe 100 days or something? So
to respond very quickly to you on this point, I believe that this understanding emerged in the meeting.
We have just got Mr. Manish Sinha also, so let me welcome him, sir. So he is joining us. I think he's on way or something. So Mr. Sinha, you are actually welcome. Sir, please carry on now.
So thank you very much.
Sir, namaskar.
Arun ji, continue kariye. Namaskar, continue kariye. Please continue.
Yeah.
So the understanding that emerged in the council, and it was actually everybody is seized with this, the importance of this. So most likely, I would not like to give a exact deadline or a time frame for this, but my understanding based on what happened in the council was that very soon, because the monsoon sessions of most of the states are either on or they would be sort of be there summoned in maybe a week's time, maybe. Some which don't have a session lined up now would probably take the ordinance route. So I don't see any impediment on this. But touching upon this issue that Ashima ma'am was referring to and that Abhishek had raised regarding the quantum of the pre-deposit. Abhishek, if you recall, this pre-deposit was as high as 20-25% in the state VATs in most of the states. And there was one more qualitative difference. In as much as if you pay 20% under the GST law by way of pre-deposit, then the matter doesn't require an order, it's stayed. The law deems it as stayed. Whereas in most of the VAT laws, if I am not mistaken, it wasn't so. It was, first of all, it was you, in order to file an appeal, you need to pay 20-25% upfront. And then the stay point was open. It was argued before the appellate authority or even the tribunal, the second appeals, as to when will you get a stay, or on payment of what amount will you get a stay. So at least I know, in many cases, second appeals were stayed upon deposits of 50-60% of the amount in dispute. So, I mean, while you have every right to question that 20%, I'll not get into the merits of why the 20% and why no other amount, but at least you will appreciate that, first of all, there is certainty of stay. Once you pay up the 20%, no more negotiation in the tribunal at the stage of hearing on stay. So that, I think, is a distinct improvement. You also will agree.
Yeah, agreed, sir.
In addition, deposit by way of...
Manish, you would like to add something? Yes, please.
Just one line. This is how the law is. That is as simple as that. And as explained by two of my colleagues, the debate on stay from recovery of rest of the amount was a hugely litigated issue when I think, if my memory serves me right, in 2009, 1st of January, CBIC issued a circular of recovery.
Yes.
And for 2 years, litigation went on. All that wisdom has gone to this law to say that the point of recovery clear in law, and also the tribunal's time, as Ashima was explaining, should not be wasted on hearing states. I understand a lawyer's outlook, and I fully appreciate and understand that. But I think, given the need to balance the interest of both sides, has been obtained in GST law. That's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Shailendra ji, can I make some point?
One small point. The pre-deposit by way of credit has also been allowed. Earlier, there has been disputes in pre-GST era whether it should be only payment by cash. So that is also having been permitted. So that is also a good point.
Yes. So Bimal ji, let me welcome you, and you have a point to make. Please do that.
Shailendra ji, I will take lead now.
Sir, please carry on, sir. No issue, sir.
You all the very best for the...
Thank you, sir. And let me thank Shashank, Priya, sir, for coming out, of his other commitments and joining us for some time. Thank you, sir. It was really wonderful gesture. Thank you.
Shailendra ji.
Shashank sir.
Sir, आप जा रहे हैं क्या?
हाँ, इसलिए कि I have just now got the link for the other meeting.
Okay. Please carry on, sir. Thank you, sir, once again. And let me thank Arun sir also, for his time and wonderful contribution, sir. As you rightly pointed out, ISD, etc. So we have Mr. Manish Sinha and Ashima ji, both of them, and they are good enough, sir, to handle all the queries. Yes.
Thank you.
Shailendra ji.
Ji. Yeah. Bimal ji, please carry on. Yes, please.
I wanted to put my point to Shashank sir, but he has left by this time now.
But you have Ashima ji and Mr. M.K. Sinha, both of them. They communicate. Absolutely no issue. Please.
Okay. So let me compliment GST Council is doing great work and commendable one, highly appreciated from trade bodies. They really deserve big appreciation. Some of the recommendations are worth noticing and appreciating also. The one and foremost, recommendation that holding up securities of subsidiary company by holding company is not a supply of service. Right. Well said. But problem here lies, there's one corporate guarantee, which we are debating and asking that if holding company is giving guarantee to the bank for extending loan to subsidiary company, is it deemed supply? And first of all, if it is deemed supply, what would be the valuation? Maybe loan taken for 50 crore or 100 crore rupees. What would be the valuation? Going further, when I look at the cross charge, and for that there's the clarity provided Now they are going to make ISD mandatorily. So ISD and cross-charge are two different concepts altogether. It was their ISD was only meant for distribution of common credit on common input services. Whereas cross-charge, there's an element of service by one distinct person to another distinct person under same PAN number. But in cross-charge, the problem and the issue which we have raised and we wanted to have clarity, the second provision of Rule 28 clearly saying if recipient is entitled for full ITC, then supplier can pick up any value and that would be deemed open market value. Having this provision in the CGST rule 28, we are finding many so-called notices are coming back. And when I'm talking about holding of securities of subsidiary company by holding company, why this clarification has come? It has come because field formation was alleging it is a supply of service and GST leviable. It is just, corresponding point which I'm, pitching for, and I'm looking for the clarity in this regard. This is pertaining to my one of the important points. Second point, which I want to have clarity here.
विमल जी, एक पॉइंट में आपने चार बड़े-बड़े पॉइंट ऑलरेडी बोल दिए.
That is a trademark, He will bundle, queries into one.
पहले मैं respond quickly कर देता हूँ, उसके बाद mere holding of shares in a subsidiary is not a supply. This has been decided in the council. Further details, you got to wait for the circular. You see, GST council gives the principles. After that, a bit of drafting goes in. So, थोड़ा सा इंतजार कर लीजिए circular का. जो दूसरा आप कह रहे हैं, giving of guarantee, whether it amounts to supply or not, तो उसमें हाल में ही तो अभी बता देंगे अभिषेक जी, पूछ लीजिएगा अलग से. जीते तो हैं बहुत बड़ा सा केस आप लोग.
गुजरात में. There is already an order.
So there is already an order. दो मुद्दे किनारे हो गए. तीसरा, cross charge or ISD, दो अलग, they operate in two different fields, is well known to the revenue administration, GST council, as well as the trade. Now this will be a long and challenging circular to draft, so you will need to hold your fire and wait for the circular to come, which will come in 2-3 weeks. जब 6 साल इंतजार कर लिए HOBO के प्रॉब्लम को handle करते हुए without any clarification, I am very sure you will be much better off once the circular on HO and BO comes out within 2 to 3 weeks. Next point you had raised is what will be the valuation. So circular will very clearly state what will be the valuation and trust the people in policy wing that they know that the circular cannot be contrary to rule. Okay, so if that is what your fear is, so you will have to wait for the circular. And the last point which you said is whether you mentioned of salary or not. So again, whether salary will become component of valuation when a supply is being examined between HO and BO. I am aware that this is again a pain point for the trade. Rest assured that if not fully, the circular will substantially address this question also. So थोड़े दिन आप इंतजार कर लीजिए, circular will answer to most of your questions. And making ISD mandatory, as far as ISD making mandatory is concerned, again, it is quite well understood that where common procurement of input services is done, that is where ISD will apply. Internally generated services cannot be dealt by ISD method. I think that is what you are alluding to. So I'm quite sure circular में वो भी देखने वाले लोग देख ही लेंगे. मैं तो टेक्नोलॉजी साइड से हूँ, इसलिए इतना ही कह सकता हूँ. So I'm quite sure that there are people who will take care of all these issues.
Yeah, Bimal ji.
Shailendra ji, just 1 or 2 minutes, quickly.
Please.
I will not. Manish sir, highly appreciated. मैं तो पहले ही कह रहा हूँ, I'm appreciating the efforts of GST Council and CBIC taking.
I know that. Thank you very much.
When you're saying circular will come, it is giving a clarity to the trade that we are working on that, and that is what the clarity we all are looking for. Why I've raised this point, I'm just drawing one attention, sir. Like in warranty, replacement of components and parts with the repair services. That is FAQ, frequently asked question is there that there is no reversal of GST credit required for spare parts and components used for in warranty services. Why I'm raising this concern, I'm just telling you my insight. Having this FAQ issued by CBIC, field formation is insisting for issuance of so-called notice. Then it is going up.
ये कब का FAQ है?
सर ये FAQ 2017-18 के बाद 3 सेक्टरल बेसिस पे इशू किया गया है।
अब वो बड़ी पुरानी बात हो गई। अब 2 पॉइंट ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन आपको दे देता हूँ। पहला तो एक सुप्रीम कोर्ट का जजमेंट आ गया इस मुद्दे पे,
यस सर,
वो आपने देख लिया होगा। दूसरा,
बिल्कुल सर,
एक सर्कुलर जल्दी ही आ जाएगा, 2-3 हफ्ते इंतजार कर लीजिए, उसमें भी आपके ये बहुत सारे मुद्दे एड्रेस हो जाएंगे।
सर सी आपने जब कहा सर्कुलर आ जाएगा, आई एम एप्रिशिएटिंग दिस पार्ट एंड दीज आर द पॉइंट मैं रेज क्यों कर रहा हूं सर, कि अभी आपने मुझसे कहा कि कॉर्पोरेट गारंटी पे गुजरात हाई कोर्ट का जजमेंट आ गया। ट्रेड लिटिगेशन में नहीं जाना चाहता, दे वांट टू हैव सर्कुलर आउट।
आई अंडरस्टैंड
दैट इज द ओनली पॉइंट आई मेड। मेरा ऑब्जेक्टिव कहीं ये नहीं था। सी अगर मुझे लिटिगेशन की बात करनी है तो मैं ट्रेड की बात रख ही नहीं पाऊंगा सर। माय ओनली ऑब्जेक्टिव इज कि कॉर्पोरेट गारंटी भी एक बर्निंग टॉपिक है, ऑन सिमिलर लाइन एक क्लैरिटी में कम एंड दैट विल हेल्प ईच ऑफ बिजनेस। यही मैं रखना चाह रहा था।
आई विल कन्वे योर emotions and sentiments to the relevant quarters.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Bimal,
Sir,
the hint which you got is the 15th August this year is going to be a different kind of freedom day. So you will have lot many circular coming in next 3 weeks. So yes, yeah, Abhishek, please, you wanted to say something.
Sir, I have questions, some apprehensions related to online gaming.
Okay.
So my questions are like this. If we see the entry which relates to 28% of tax, it talks about betting, gambling, or horse race. If we talk about Schedule 3, it says actionable claims other than lottery, betting, and gambling, which means that if we look harmoniously, online gaming services are not there. So at least they are not there in this schedule talking about 28% of the tax, because it only includes betting, gambling, or horse race. And when we talk about Schedule 3, it says actionable claim other than lottery, betting, and gambling. It is not there as well. Now the question which comes is, it appears that GST Council has unanimously decided to tag this at 28%. We've also heard that this tax will be retrospective, because it is only a sort of a clarification, because we heard the officials making that statement that this was always at 28%. So our question is like this, that when both of these entries are very clear, of course, GST Council today has the power to make the rate at 28%. By way of an appropriate amendment to Schedule 3, by way of an appropriate amendment even to the entry which pertains to 28%. But by no stretch of imagination, we are able to digest that the 28% rate, and I'm specifically talking here about online gaming, will be at 28%, also for a reason that when we talk about the entry of 28%, it uses the word actionable claim in the form of chance to win. And today GST Council says that there is no distinction between game of chance versus game of skill. But that can happen only prospectively. Because if we see the 28% entry, that entry in itself recognizes chance to win. It doesn't say any game related to or any betting, gambling, or horse race. So how is that that this amendment will come through? Whether game of chance or game of skill will be completely ignored, at least for the days which have gone by. This distinction is very clearly in the Gaming Acts. This distinction is very clear in the GST rate notification. So how can this amendment for online gaming be retrospective? Lastly, on the valuation part, if we talk about the valuation, of course, GST Council today has the power to determine the valuation of various services, or for that matter, valuation of various goods. But now what will happen is, if the gross amount is charged to tax, you may tomorrow agree to charge it at 100%. That would be the policy decision. But the moment the GST Council today decides to charge the amount of bet value is the table money, which is not the service revenue of the service provider of online gaming. In a game of Ludo, when 4 people participate, all 4 put 100
अभिषेक
rupees
जी,
in their wallet.
मैंने सुन लिया आपकी बात, मैं समझ भी गया. You
हाँ
are
जी, sir.
saying harmoniously reading this entry, that entry. You would have also read the interpretation of the government like you. I have also read through the statements of Honorable Revenue Secretary and Chairman CBIC. Right? So this is a matter of litigation, what you are alluding to. And I don't think this is the forum at which we should litigate. Government will take a view what it has to take in the litigation. They have already told I think there is some clarification, and I'm only quoting the media, that recovery, if any, will be made only after the litigation is completed. As far as using the language that by no stretch of imagination, that's your interpretation. Let me be very clear here, that's your interpretation. 1. 2, the legal history of this issue is known to me, like other panelists, and to say that taxation law must make a distinction between game of chance and game of skill is completely erroneous. Taxation law are well within its right to say that I decline to make this distinction. This is what my interpretation is. Again, this is not government policy. Why I say so? Because it is the administration of gambling houses which is a subject of list 2, wherein this distinction came in the Supreme Court judgments. That's the legal history of the subject. So this is a matter, all I will say, Abhishek ji, is a matter of litigation and considerable interpretation. Our having to agree on this forum will not resolve really the issue. Going forward, you are very sure the council has made it very clear that it will be on face value and it will be on full 28% of the face value. What constitutes face value is a matter of definition. When they define the rule as to what constitutes face value in casino, that is what will become the face value. How it is defined is a choice which, on valuation, I am very clear that there are umpteen number of judgments of Supreme Court that once the principle of taxation is accepted, that this event is taxable, revenue administration and tax laws have considerable flexibility in defining how the valuation shall be and what shall be the rate. So I think this is an issue on which I will also wait for the circulars, judgments, draftings, etc., like you, and it will be an interesting journey ahead, is all I will say.
Right, sir. Right, sir. I agree with you.
Abhishek
I agree
ji,
with you, sir.
what Manish ji
Yes.
is saying, that Abhishek ji, you will have your own cake. Don't worry. You know, if the litigation is the cake, then
No, I completely agree with Manish. Yeah.
I think he knows that pretty well.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes, so we will have, in fact, I mean, some of the queries which we got, some of the questions by mail, they wanted to understand, or maybe Bimal, you would like to perhaps add more, that apparently the council has also approved some kind of IT roadmap. The detailed presentation was made, so the people and the taxpayers are very curious that, what kind of new tools either the GSTN is going to come up with, or what kind of roadmap the GSTN is going to follow, and whether the SSCs and the taxpayers also need to gear up in that direction, or probably keep the pace, foot to foot or shoulder to shoulder with the GSTN. So maybe, I will request Mr. Sinha to talk about it, briefly, what has been decided, because Honorable Finance Minister also talked about it, that, the council at length discussed about this.
See, I will say that there is no new compliance which is going to come on the head of taxpayers. So that apprehension, if any, should be set aside. What the roadmap would be to provide for better user interface is one dimension, and second is use lot of third-party data to identify taxpayers who are sort of risky. So if you ask me as to what should a compliance professional do, I have always said that if you do 3 things, you are on very firm wicket in GST. 1, ensure that your R1, 3B gaps are not there. So what you have declared as your own liability is an admitted liability, pay taxes on that. Second, ensure that 2B, 3B gaps are not there. That is what has come to you by way of ITC. In the 2B statement is what you should avail as ITC. And if there is a rollover of the past, you should take. And third, to the extent possible, do due diligence. There is enough information by way of know your suppliers on the portal to not get engaged with people who issue invoice without making any supply. There is a lot of discussion which happened in council, but it was essentially to facilitate an honest taxpayer. So when you have to facilitate honest taxpayer, you also have to take care that there is not an unfair competition in the market by way of people using illicit means to push credit. So that part will be addressed. Therefore, for compliant taxpayers, I do not see any challenge or increase in compliance burden. If at all, I see that they will get very easily identified going forward using analytics and third-party data that he's a reliable taxpayer. So taxpayer identification in terms of compliance behavior is a direction in which it will go. Higher usage of advanced technology is a reality which will be there. GST is a complex and large platform. So these are the general discussions which took place in the council. So on registration, clean up the base, facilitate the honest taxpayers, and on credit flow, ensure that taxpayers are assisted by way of multiple statements so that they are able to pay the liability which they have declared and avail ITC which is legitimately due to them. Neither more nor less, so that both sides are satisfied.
I would just like to add something.
Yeah, please.
Like sir has rightly said that the gap between 1 and 3B, between 2B and 3B credit, all this should be minimized by the taxpayers. And also like the drive to check non-existent taxpayers, like even it has been largely assisted and spear-driven by the GSTN as far as they had identified the taxpayers based on certain parameters. If you look at the amount or the accuracy with which the non-existent taxpayers have been identified, out of the 70,000 verifications which have been done so far, 18,000 have been found to be non-existent. Let us assume that out of these 18,000, there may be errors on both the sides, but still the percentage is extremely huge. And out of this 17,000 crore has been detected, and nearly 10% of it, that is 1,700 crores, is the ITC which has been blocked. So if these analytics are showing that there is a gap, and by use of data analytics, we are able to track them so fast. And some of the states, by using their own, adding their own local parameters, have found that 80% of those which have been identified locally are non-existent. I mean, one of the states has given this report also. So this shows that now system is having a huge data. And once we work on it, we are able to find a large number of non-existent taxpayers or taxpayers who are passing on fake credits. But if the taxpayer is actually compliant, he's making the compliances properly, he's not taking fake credit, then he's not likely to be questioned. Only the concentration of the government is on the non-existent taxpayers, not on others. And any suggestions on this would be welcome, in the sense that, okay, that these are the parameters which we are finding incorrect. We will take from this special drive, and those parameters in the next red flag reports, those parameters will be tweaked accordingly to arrive at better and better parameters. But apart from that, the government has no intention to, go against any tax compliant taxpayer.
So, ma'am, if you may come in here, Prashanth, this side, and Manish has rightly put it, a lot of effort is being made to facilitate the taxpayers. I think one of the issues which generally companies are facing is around the registration piece of it. And there are two kinds of issues which are being faced. One, on ground, getting a registration has become as difficult as it could be for, legitimate companies as well. And secondly, the registration suspension. So although we intend to, and I think the intention is right, which is to pick up taxpayers who are, not reliable and high risk taxpayers, it would be also important at the ground level. What is in the spirit and is being followed as far as the policy is concerned, the action on the ground also ensures that companies who have multiple registrations, who are filing their returns almost on a timely basis, should not have a situation where they can't even take a registration if they intend to add registration to make the compliance even better. And it helps revenue as well to that extent. And also the same reason should be for registration revocation. I mean, the suspension happens, the whole business stops. and therefore the companies are unable to basically undertake the business, which helps both revenue as well as the company per se. So those aspects, I think, should be looked at more critically to ensure that at least some of the taxpayers who are better off because they have multiple registrations and you have enough parameters, it would help as to how you are using that power at the lowest level in terms of suspending the registration or providing the registration. Otherwise, completely aligned with what your thoughts are or Manish's thought are on this subject specifically. And we do see a lot of use of this technology in the right way, per se.
Yeah, ma'am, just to add to what Prashanth rightly, mentioned, I think the intention has never been suspect, and the intention is always to go after the tax evaders and nab them. And the intention is to be as helpful as possible to the compliant taxpayers. The issue which happens very often is where do we draw the line? And how do we ensure that in our desire to make more and more people compliant, we avoid any kind of difficulty for people who are already compliant? So that drawing that line has been challenging in the past. I'm absolutely sure there are no quick fixes there. So it's not that it's very easy even for the tax administration to do it. But since you mentioned that we have enormous amount of data and the data is across parameters, there is also data sharing that is happening between the various agencies, and that data is being matched. I'm sure some kind of a guideline can be formed to ensure that people who are, let's say, 90% compliant or 95% compliant, if there is a small error of non-compliance due to whatever be the reason, in that case, possibly the way the tax administration treats that is different from another case where there is a 50% non-compliance. So some parameters like that, if they can be worked out and they can be, distributed all across to tax administration across the country, it will be very, very helpful for compliant taxpayers.
Right.
Yeah.
That can be, those things can be shared with the GST policy wing for further consideration of both the ways. We have to look at it both the ways, as you have rightly said, that we do not give registration to those who come for issuing fake invoices at the same, so that we safeguard the revenue. At the same time, those who are compliant, we facilitate them. You also would know that we have provided for automatic revocation of registration, as well as once the compliance is done, then the registration gets automatically,
Sure.
That revocation is also, cancelled, and again he gets the registration automatically. So we are also trying for reaching the kind of balance between the two.
Yeah. So I think, ma'am, nobody is doubting the intention and the way the policy has worked out. It's just on ground, factually things are not in the same way as we have been suggesting it per se, or you have been guiding per se. And those challenges are something which we really want to be taken care of as industry. So I think we'll discuss separately as well. I don't think we should hijack the discussion on this.
No, absolutely fine.
I think the other important point, if I may make, Shailendra,
we have provided a grievance redressal committee between center and states, where the taxpayers are also invited. So it can be raised at that point also.
I think this is a very important point. The way the interaction between industry and the tax administration is taking place and has been undertaking for the last 6 years is something that has to be acknowledged and appreciated. And the way the government has been coming up with various kind of clarifications. Even in this GST Council meeting, if I have to just pick up a theme, the theme of reducing litigation, we don't hear these kind of circulars where you say, as is basis, we will take care of the past in terms of various kind of rate reductions or rate situations which have been taken care of, which has happened. And that is so appreciative. I think it really reduces the litigation which may happen.
Let me say on this, as is where is basis, it's a huge thing, considering that earlier we used to have a section 11C notification, had the power under the act and the corresponding notification. Today we are giving that benefit by way of circular.
Yes, absolutely, ma'am, absolutely. So I think in the whole scheme of heated things of casinos and online gaming,
it's just the opposite of online gaming. It's just the opposite of online gaming. You are saying for the past how you can tax. Here we are saying for the past we will not tax. Just the opposite.
No, exactly. So I think this aspect of the theme that has gone into this whole GST Council minutes or the way it has come up, the as-is basis, as ma'am also has acknowledged, and completely agree, the way government is saying that we won't look at the past, there are genuine interpretation issues. Acknowledging that aspect and moving forward, reducing the litigation really would help. Circulars on hopefully ISD cross charge as they come along would be great. Your cinema related clarification or director services related clarification, we haven't talked about it, rightly so, because you have a lot of other issues. But fact is, this shows the theme that there are areas where if the industry is bringing up the issues, they are being positively
Yes.
also considered.
Yes.
Even the
Even
GTA, for
Abhishek's point
instance.
of view, to be honest, Abhishek's point of view on pre-deposit, member GST, honorable member GST saying that you can represent on that, clearly reflects the fact that, you know, we are not deaf. We will hear you out. There is a way we can work it out. If there is a need of the industry, we will definitely look into it. The ease of procedures in terms of GTS, these are small things which have been done, but they really matter because of the fact how they help and enable the industries. The refund procedure where the numerator denominator has been now clarified.
See, the request of the
Small
GTS
things.
was so genuine. The request
Yeah.
of the GTS was totally genuine, and I'm glad we were able to accept and smoothen it out.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think that aspect one has to acknowledge and appreciate as well. Of course, there are areas where we will have debate. That's how I, Abhishek, Mani will have our jobs, you know, really cleared up at any point in time.
Well conceded. I was, see, more than 2,000 clarifications have been issued since GST came. Very few issues really deep which are left. So going forward, I'm very sure that we will continue on this path, and a responsive method of GST working is a welcome change. And it's very simple. Somebody like Tax India can very easily calculate in a measurable method as to what is the number of clarification which is getting issued post GST and pre GST, and you will clearly see an extremely responsive tax administration from the policy level post GST. At ground level, there are challenges which is conceded. It is always a very difficult thing to manage, but I personally believe that more and more clarification and standard operating procedures help even address that problem, that frivolous queries are not raised, frivolous issues are not raised. And some of the challenges which you have alluded to in relation to registration are known. Going forward, I'm quite sure we'll find a way of segmenting taxpayers and particularly taking care of those who are compliant and are adding to the business and economy of the country.
So I think we are, you know, the twin hands of the clock are threatening now. I think we are nearing the timeline. So I guess, you know, before we wrap up, and I thank all the speakers, we should take up, you know, a couple of quick queries. In fact, you know, the one gentleman has a bit anonymous gentleman. He himself is admitting that, you know, I'm little anonymized, you know, but very keen to know the national level advanced ruling authority. What happened to that creature? That creature is still in the making, or the creature is completely gone, erased? What happened? So maybe Ashima, you would like to talk about it. You know, that this query is about, you know, any update on the national level advanced ruling authority.
With the coming of GSTs, I hope they will be able to resolve the issue better, because you see, even whatever it may be, advanced ruling continues to be an advanced ruling and applicable to a particular PAN number. So it is better to have a GST decision which is final in nature and which is applicable across the jurisdiction. So it is always better to have a final decision. So far, there is no progress on it. Let me be very clear. There is no discussion on the national level advance.
In fact, there is another query which talks about that, you know, somebody from the plastic scrap industry, they are looking at, you know, this on a scrap, at least the tax rate should be reduced from 18% to 5%, you know, which is
18% has been for all kinds of scrap. 18% has been decided, and at least as far as rate is concerned, regarding reduction of rate, there is not likely to be any discussion. But we have a subcommittee to resolve the scrap issue as a whole, because there have been demands from the steel industry and others which are very well aware of about taking it on RCM or having rate reduction, etc. Anyway, that committee will look into the issue comprehensively.
Right. So I think
this is one of the deferred agendas.
Okay. So I mean, I think we have some queries, but those queries are not queries. You know, they are observations. In fact, you know. So I think, you know, that will not be too useful. So let me thank, you know, of course, Mr. Manish for joining it a bit late, but adding a lot of values. Of course, Abhishek ji, Prashanth, Manish sir, in fact, Bimal ji, of course, and the member Shashank Priya sir who joined, who was kind enough, and Ashima ji, of course, I mean, who represents the gender justice as well. We were missing that, we were missing her, and really thank you, extra thank you from my side, because you really, you took the pain of joining finally.
Thanks a lot for inviting me. It's a pleasure to join. It's such a pleasure to have the company of such, as we can say, Diggaj panelists like Manish Sinha sir, Shashank Priya sir, and
Yes.
to have the best of the industry, the best of the CAs. And Bimal Jain ji, unka naam hi suna hai zyada.
You are
aggressive,
you are not less than a giant, in fact, or maybe the giant in the making. So in fact, let me thank the audiences, in fact, for bearing with us. In fact, it's almost now 80 minutes or so, and we must thank them for their patience, etc. And I'm pretty sure that lots of clarification which has come, and good observation from other panelists, and also, some of the areas of litigation also pointed out. So, that will also help, So I'm pretty sure, the procedural changes and good changes. In fact, the insight, particularly about the ISD side, we discussed, in fact, that was very nice. The FATF compliance, every country has to comply with the FATF, and in compliance to that, the PMLA notification was issued with respect to the GSTN. But unfortunately, a lot of misreporting happened, and that created, the very palpable fear in the mind of taxpayers that was not required, in fact. So thank you. I must thank all the panelists for clarifying various technical issues, and I'm pretty sure that good number of the audiences and the people who have joined today will have substantive points to ponder over and maybe improve the compliance again, so that GSTN is slightly more happier, in fact, after this webinar. So let me thank all the panelists and everybody for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.